The night was alive with the hum of cicadas and the distant rumble of thunder as Nathan Harper stood on the porch of his newly built home, the sharp scent of rain hanging in the air. Lightning splintered the sky, casting fleeting shadows across the sleek, modern lines of his house-y structure that embodied his years of toil as a civil engineer. This was his refuge, a place carved out of dreams and determination, far from the clamor of city life. But as the storm gathered strength, so did Nathan's unease. Something was wrong. He could feel it in the way the neighborhood seemed to hold its breath, in the way the lights from the house next door flickered with a quiet menace. Across the hedge, a figure stood motionless, watching. Margaret Sullivan, a woman whose name carried the weight of decades in Willow Grove, had been observing Nathan since the day he arrived. Her silhouette was rigid, a sentinel guarding her domain. Nathan didn't need to see her face to know the contempt in her eyes. His house, with its glass walls and minimalist design, was an affront to her vision of suburban perfection. To Margaret, it was more than an eyesore, was a challenge to her authority. And Margaret Sullivan was not a woman who tolerated challenges. Nathan had always craved a space to call his own. At 36, he had spent years designing bridges and teaching at the local university, saving every penny to build a home that reflected his need for clarity and freedom. His house wasn't the grandest in Willow Grove, but it was his, open, airy, with panoramic windows that framed the rolling hills. He'd chosen this plot for its solitude, its promise of peace. But peace was pro-vying elusive. Margaret Sullivan, a widow in her late 50s, had ruled Willow Grove for nearly 30 years. Her colonial home, with its manicured lawn and classic charm, was the neighborhood's gold standard. She knew every resident's story, every property's history, and she wielded that knowledge like a weapon. To her, Nathan's modern home was a disruption, a rebellion against the uniformity she'd cultivated. But it wasn't just about aesthetics. Nathan's arrival had shifted the balance of power, and Margaret wasn't about to let that stand. It began with subtle jabs of comment about the odd design of his house, a pointed remark about how close it was to her property line. Nathan, ever polite, brushed them off, hoping to avoid conflict. He had no interest in neighborhood drama. His focus was on his work and the quiet evenings he spent sketching by the window, watching the sun dip below the hills. But Margaret's remarks grew sharper, her VY sits more intrusive. She'd appear at his door unannounced, offering unsolicited advice on his landscaping or questioning the wisdom of his glass-heavy design. Nathan would nod, his jaw tight, and retreat to his sanctuary. He wasn't one for confrontation, but he could sense the storm brewing. One humid afternoon, as Nathan worked in his garage on a model for a new bridge, a sharp knock interrupted him. He opened the door to find Margaret standing there, her smile as thin as a blade. "Nathan," she said, her voice laced with false courtesy, "we need to talk about your house. It's far too close to my property line. It's invasive." Nathan's pulse quickened, but he kept his tone steady. "Margaret, I've followed every regulation. My house is well within my boundaries. There's no issue." Her eyes narrowed. "Rules don't always make things right," she snapped. "This was a quiet neighborhood before you came along with your monstrosity. You don't care about anyone else, do you?" Nathan took a deep breath, fighting the urge to escalate. "I'm sorry you feel that way, but this is my home. I'm not changing it." He held her gaze, refusing to back down. Margaret's smile vanished, and she turned abruptly, her footsteps sharp against the pavement. That night, as Nathan sat by his window with a cup of coffee, her words gnawed at him. He'd been meticulous, securing every permit, checking every zoning law. Had he missed something? He shook his head. This wasn't about rules. It was about control. The first real blow came a week later. Nathan found a letter slipped under his door, typed in an official-looking font. His stomach churned as he read. "This notice informs you that your construction violates Willow Grove zoning regulations, specifically regarding proximity to the property line shared with Mrs. Margaret Sullivan. Rectify this within 7 days, or legal action will follow. No signature, no return address, just a thinly veiled threat. He called his lawyer, Claire Bennett, a pragmatic woman who had handled his property purchase. "This is nonsense," Claire said after reviewing the letter. "Your permits are solid. This is harassment, Nathan. Document everything." But Margaret was already escalating. Days later, Nathan found his mailbox vandalized, the lock smashed. His security cameras caught nothing but a fleeting shadow. Then came the scratches on his car, deep, deliberate marks that screamed of malice. Nathan's anger flared, but he forced himself to stay calm. Margaret was playing dirty, and he needed to be smarter. Determined to fight back, Nathan began to investigate. He wasn't just going to defend himself. He was going to uncover what drove Margaret's vendetta. With Claire's help, he reviewed his property records, confirming everything was in order. But the more he thought about Margaret's behavior, the more he suspected a deeper motive. Why was she so obsessed with his house? What was she hiding? On a colleague's recommendation, Nathan hired a private investigator named Tom Reed, a former detective with a knack for uncovering secrets. "This isn't about your house," Tom said after hearing Nathan's story. "People like her don't go this far over a property line. There's something bigger. Give me a few days." While Tom dug, Margaret's campaign intensified. She spread rumors among the neighbors, claiming Nathan's house was lowering property values. The homeowner association, under her sway, sent inspectors to nitpick his property, citing trivial issues. Each sit felt like an invasion, a reminder that his sanctuary was under siege. Nathan's focus at work faltered. His students noticed his distraction, his colleagues his fatigue. Willow Grove, once a haven, now felt like a battlefield. Then Tom called with a bombshell. "Margaret's been running a scheme," he said, his voice low. "For years, she's been buying up properties in Willow Grove, using her influence in the homeowner association to drive down values, so she can snap them up cheap. Your house modern, high-value is a problem. It's raising the area's profile, messing with her plans. She needs you out." Nathan's blood ran cold. This wasn't about aesthetics. It was about money and power. "What else?" he asked. "She's tied to a group of investors," Tom continued. "They're profiting off her ability to control the market. I've got financial records, property deeds, and some emails that tie her to the scheme. It's enough to expose her." Armed with this, Nathan shifted gears. He wasn't just fighting for his home. He was fighting for the truth. He and Claire prepared to confront the homeowner association. But first, Nathan needed allies. He reached out to his neighbors, those who had stayed silent out of fear. At first, they were wary, but as Nathan shared Tom's findings, their hesitation turned to outrage. They had their own stories, properties sold under duress, deals that reeked of manipulation. One neighbor, an older woman named Ruth Carter, became his fiercest ally. "Margaret strong-armed my sister into selling her house years ago," Ruth said, her voice trembling. "I should have fought back then. I'm with you now." Together, they planned their move. The homeowner association was holding a public meeting, and Nathan saw it as his chance to expose Margaret. He spent days preparing, compiling Tom's evidence into a compelling case. The night of the meeting, the community center buzzed with tension. Margaret sat at the front, her posture defiant, her lawyer at her side. She thought she was untouchable, but Nathan was ready. When his turn came, he stood, his voice steady despite the knot in his chest. "This isn't about my house," he began. "It's about what's been happening in Willow Grove for years. Margaret Sullivan has been manipulating property values, pressuring residents to sell, using her influence to enrich herself and her investors. She's not protecting our community, she's exploiting it." He presented the evidence, financial records, property transactions, emails that laid bare Margaret's scheme. The room stirred, whispers spreading. Margaret's lawyer tried to interrupt, but Nathan pressed on. "I'm not the only one she's targeted. How many of you have felt her pressure? This stops now." Ruth stood next, her voice cutting through the room. "She bullied my family for years. It's time we stand up." Others followed, their stories painting a damning picture. Margaret's composure faltered, her face pale as the tide turned. By the meeting's end, the association voted to investigate her actions and suspend her influence. It was a VY Tory, but Nathan knew the fight wasn't over. Margaret fought back. She filed a defamation lawsuit against Nathan, claiming he'd ruined her reputation. She tried to rally her remaining allies, but her support was crumbling. Tom's investigation uncovered more, a money laundering scheme tied to her investors, enough to draw police attention. When the authorities stepped in, Margaret's empire unraveled. Her properties were seized, her allies abandoned her, and the homeowner association issued a formal apology to Nathan and the community. Willow Grove began to heal. Neighbors who had once been DVY dead came together, not just to rebuild, but to redefine their community. Nathan's house, once a symbol of conflict, became a beacon of resilience. One evening, as he stood on his porch watching the hills glow under the setting sun, Nathan felt a quiet peace settle over him. The fight had tested him, forced him to confront his fears, and shown him the strength of unity. He had come to Willow Grove seeking solitude, but he'd found something greater, a community worth fighting for. As the stars emerged, Nathan knew the battle had changed him. He was no longer just an engineer or a homeowner. He was a leader, ready for whatever lay ahead. Willow Grove was his home, and he would protect it, just as it had protected him. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this VY Deo with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next VY Deo.